Here we go.
All right. You are all likely aware of the expansive diversity, equity, and inclusion policy of the League of Women Voters and its importance to the League. The two pillars of our organizations are diversity, equity, and inclusion, and nonpartisanship. On the slide, you'll see the DEI policy from LWVUS. Discrimination or harassment of any kind will not be accepted within the League, including but not limited to race, socioeconomic status, age, ability, status, religion, sexual orientation, national origin, gender identity, or marital status. The League is committed to fostering, cultivating, and preserving a culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion, access, and belonging for all people. The League is an organization that respects and values the richness of our community and our members. The collective sum of our individual differences and life experiences represents not only our culture, but our reputation and the organization's mission as well. What you may not know is that the Wisconsin League are considered leaders in the DEI space and have been for quite some time, even prior to what the LWVUS considers the transformation journey resulting in this policy. Next page, please. Today, we'll be covering several things. We'll be reviewing how DEI strengthens our mission of civic engagement. We will show ways that we're already reaching out to those least likely to vote, the only way that we can increase our impact in our communities. We will understand the hub and the spectrum, the hub being that no league is alone. We're all pursuing the same mission and help and learn from each other. And the spectrum, meaning that we are all at different places on our DEI journey, individually and as organizations, and wherever we're at is where we're supposed to be. We will illustrate tangible examples of how DEI is the bedrock of all of our work. We'll offer concrete steps for where to start, some best resources, and who to ask for advice. We ask that you keep yourself muted throughout the program. We will have someone, that would be me, monitoring the chat for comments and questions. We would also invite you to share with us some of your own stories of your great work. What we are sharing is a living document that we plan to update as we get more information and ideas from local leagues. Thank you, and now we'll begin. Next slide.
Yes, so first we want to start off with our own personal journeys. We included a link to a wonderful TED Talk by Kimberly Crenshaw, who coined the term intersectionality. Crenshaw invites us to face the difficult realities of race and gender bias and to recognize how both of these forces or factors can intersect to cause compounded harm. She introduces the concept of intersectionality to describe the overlap, noting that when someone stands at the crossroads of multiple forms of exclusion, they're more likely to be struck by all of them. In this powerful and moving talk, Crenshaw urges us to bear witness to these injustices and to raise our voices on behalf of those who are too often overlooked. Intersectionality, in case some of you aren't aware, is a way of understanding how different parts of our personality, like race, gender, class, sexual orientation, combined create unique experiences of advantage or disadvantage. It shows that these aspects of identity don't exist separately, but they're connected, and they affect how someone experiences the world in different ways. An example could be a queer Latina might face challenges that are very different than a white woman or a Black woman because of the different factors of race, gender, and sexual orientation that impact her life in very distinct ways. And so you see a lot of these different factors on the intersectionality wheel, such as education, parental status, geographic location, thinking styles. The list really does go on and on. After focusing on ourselves, we need to think about how we see others. So we have two great links. One is The Bias Inside Us, which reviews how bias lives inside all of us, right? Where none of us are excluded of this. It also talks about the science of bias and bias in real life. Bias is a process that builds over a lifetime. It's a preference or prejudice, and it actually can begin in the womb. At just a few hours, newborn infants already prefer listening to a language that they heard in the womb over an unfamiliar language. And babies quickly learn to prefer people from familiar groups. A baby might prefer a face that matches the gender or race of their primary caregiver. Implicit. So that's the first link. And then the second, implicit societal attitudes, is a self-assessment that you can take to discover your own implicit biases. Implicit bias refers to unconscious attitudes, stereotypes, or judgments that we hold about people based on several different factors like race, gender, age, disability, sexual orientation, or other characteristics. It's important to remember that it's automatic and it's unconscious, but it can influence our decisions and behaviors in subtle ways. Some examples: unintentional exclusion and outreach, assuming that a volunteer of color is less knowledgeable about political processes, or being reluctant to allow leadership positions because of someone who either is what we might deem very young or someone who might be elderly. There's several unintended outcomes, though. It perpetuates inequality, it excludes talent, it limits diversity and inclusion within organizations, and it creates barriers to equity. Some ways to address implicit bias is just education, awareness, teaching strategies such as inclusive language, active listening, and checking our own assumptions. Next, I want to talk about white privilege. So we also have an essay that we included by Peggy McIntosh. So bear with me, there's a lot to unpack in this power privilege wheel. So first I'm going to start off with what the essay explores, right? And it's the concept of white privilege, a system of unearned advantages that white people experience, again, unconsciously, in a racially structured society. McIntosh parallels male privilege with white privilege, arguing that both are systemically protected from scrutiny. She describes white privilege as an invisible knapsack of everyday advantages that white people can rely on, such as being treated respectfully in stores, not being followed, seeing people of their race represented in media, pop culture, and not being seen as a representative of their race in professional settings. There are several key points that she includes in her essay that I just wanted to quickly point out. The unacknowledged advantage. Right? So white people are socialized not to recognize the racial advantage, just as men don't see their male privilege. This obliviousness maintains societal hierarchies. Racism as a system, right? Not just as an act. We've all heard about systemic racism. Daily effects on privilege. Privilege versus entitlement. Some aspects of white privilege, like expecting fair legal treatment, should be basic rights for all. Call to action. She talks about asking what people with privilege will do to dismantle the systems that confer unearned advantages. She encourages using privilege like resources, access, and influence to challenge inequities, promoting systemic change. She even includes a felicitation guidance where she outlines strategies for educators and facilitators to discuss privilege thoughtfully, emphasizing personal testimony over abstract opinion. And ultimately, she challenges readers to recognize, reflect, and act against the systems that uphold racial and other forms of privilege. So Jean, Christy, are there any other things that you wanted to point out on this wheel?
Sure, I would, especially when I look at the right-hand circle. That feels very much about the situation we're in today, frankly, with our current administration, where so much of the power is held in. Individuals tend to be white males for the most part. And again, that's just sort of where we are today. It's that center circle on the left. And as you move outward from that circle, you start to see those who are considered having less privilege and also less power. And the marginalized line is where we look at things such as the level of education. Certainly in the center circle, it's post-secondary education. The next circle out is high school, and then elementary education as well too. One of the things we know very well about our own league on a local state and national basis is that we tend to be a group of highly educated women. And that's something that we need to be cognizant of. It's not something that we need to be aware of when we are, whether we're hosting events, when we're talking to people or whatever. So those are, as you look around, there's a lot in that wheel on the left, but I think it really does help you understand. And I think it's very clear and frankly realistic in terms of understanding how, again, that circle of privilege and power tend to go hand in hand as well too. Jean, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you both covered it quite well. And again, anybody who has questions or comments, feel free to type them in the chat.
Sounds good. And one of the things I think maybe Jean already mentioned, but all of the links that we have in this are live links actually in the PowerPoint presentation that take you directly to those sources. So not only is diversity, equity, and inclusion a personal journey, it's an organizational journey. And we look at it and how do we create that welcoming and empowering space for everyone. And that's, that is something that we work on, we continually work on, and we're all at different starting points in different places along the continuum. It's also about how we talk about the League's history of voting and women's rights. And there's a really great op-ed from Virginia Case, our former CEO, that was, she wrote in August of 2019, that really does look realistically at the women's movement before the 19th Amendment was approved, and how it tended to be focused on white women. It was a complicated time. It was an ugly time, and that's I know that's part of the reason why it's so important to us today, where we sit today, that we acknowledge our roots and our history, and that at that point in time we did not uplift women of color as we did white women, and it's something that we is just realistically part of our history, and we don't try to cover that up. There's also I've listened to two, there's a third one coming up in July, but how we enter into alliances and partnerships with other organizations. LWVUS has had two already. One was just last week. The second one was last week on corporate and organizational partnerships. And it's about an hour-long webinar. I know that they were going to record them, so they're probably, the first two are probably out there. And it talks in detail, the first one, about the national alliances that have been created with both the American Library Association, the Girl Scouts, with other organizations as well too. And then last week it was talked a little bit more about that, but talked about at the local level and had some steps that you might want to consider when you're looking at creating alliances with other organizations. So that's something I think I took the link off because it was a link to the webinar, not a link to the recording, but I would think it's out there this week, I would expect. So when local leagues are really talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, one of the things that we thought when we were first creating this is really just to take a step back as a local league and really identify what your league together is most proud of overall. We all have different things depending upon our location, the size of our league, whether it's rural, suburban, or urban, but really talk about that. What are you most proud of? How do you set your priorities within your own league? Again, that's going to be based on size, location, makeup of your organization, and then what your toughest challenges are as well too, to have those open discussions and just in general. And then on the right hand, in the right hand box, it's Jean kicked us off with the expansive definition of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're not just talking about race, we're talking about socioeconomic status, age, ability status, religion, sexual orientation, national origin, gender identity, marital status. And I know in that circle of power and privilege, military status was also in there as well too. So there are even others besides that. And then to ask yourselves as an organization, do you already have a DEI coordinator or a chairperson or an active DEI committee? We're fairly certain that some of the smaller leagues may not have an actual committee. And so then the next step is, do you have members who are passionate about diversity, equity, and inclusion who might be interested in starting a DEI committee? And that's where the CAC comes in, the Community Alliance Committee comes in, is for those DEI coordinators or chairs or those who have that passion around DEI to we meet on an every other month basis. And actually, our next meeting is tomorrow, as a matter of fact. And it's a time and a place for us to discuss what we're doing, some of our successes and challenges that we faced, and share ideas as well. And then we created, knowing that every league is coming from a different starting point and takes different paths, we created what we called the DEI Enthusiasm Index. We also know that DEI work is always evolving. The literature around DEI is always evolving as well, too. And it's not just in the hands of one person or one committee or one chairperson. And so this is sort of the continuum that we see. And we created this because we'd heard this, perhaps sometimes within our own leagues or from other leagues as well, is on the left, we're not fully aware of our own community's level of diversity. That's where in the past years we've actually gotten demographic information after the census has been done, where we're able to see what the real diversity is within our own communities. The second step is we're interested, but we don't know where to start. And that's, again, the purpose of this presentation today. And then the next being, we're satisfied with where we are. And we would like to encourage individuals as well as organizations, leagues themselves, to think through that. And because we're always learning something new every day. And that leads to the fourth and the light bulb. We're continually learning and have ideas to share. And I can tell you that, and I presume that April's on now, available. She's going to take over next. But she just read a new article in the I think it was the New York Times just this morning, and sent it over to us and said, I want to comment on this. Is it okay? And we said, great. It's just, fresh information. So again, as an organization, to ask yourselves, and whether it's your board or whether it's with your entire membership, where would you currently place your league? And I think that will be helpful and valuable for you as well, too. So if April is here.
I am. Hi, Christy.
Good, there you go.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. So just building off what Christy was saying, recognizing that individually and as our individual chapters, we're all on this continuum and at different places, at different points of time. I think it's good to kind of take a step back and just remember that what I think we should all know, that DEI is one of two foundational pillars of the league. And so here you see at the top of the slide, why does it matter in defending democracy? That's why we're all here. That's why we're all in league. We are the democracy defenders. So why is DEI important to that? You can see a couple of really important ideas highlighted in these blue boxes here. Democracy includes everyone. It's how we ensure that everyone has a seat at the table. More voices and viewpoints bring better outcomes. As the league, our greatest impact is to engage with those that are least likely to vote. Voting is how we ensure all voices are heard. And we're not doing this for diversity's sake, right? There's a real purpose behind it. To go, maybe one level deeper and to the point, the article that Christy mentioned, it was in the New York Times. It was an opinion piece. I think it originally published on May 11th, and it was written by John Cameron Mitchell. I think if we just, kind of look at where we are right now in this point in time, as Christy said, DEI is continually evolving. We're continually learning. But if we look at where we are today, if we had to think about maybe like a problem solution statement, we could describe working in the DEI space at this particular point as a place of disunity resulting from well-intentioned culture that slices up into ever more specific identities carefully ranked by historic oppression. So if what we know is that we're strongest when everyone is at the table and has a voice, when we're all included, we know that we have to help build that community, and that's when true democracy is really happening. And so markers of that strong community that we're building are storytelling, it's hospitality, it's neighborhood engagement. when we start to connect in person with people as those in the DEI space leading that charge and defending democracy, that's when those walls of identity start to crumble. And that's our greatest strength, that empathy that we're feeling. If we go to the next slide, we can talk a little bit about how do we do that. So that's the why. Now we can get into a little bit about the how. And the how is like I was saying, it's in building that community that relies on relationships. So in order to strengthen relationships and to make our work more impactful, we need to find those ways to tap into a broader audience, to really engage not just people at, on a one-dimensional level, but really through hearts and minds to bring it all together. When we get in the room with people, it was the quote in the article. If we were in text speak, it would be IRL, in real life. So those connections that we make and those relationships that we build happen more deeply when we can look in each other's eyes and we can share the same space. And that can be scary and that can be challenging. So that's one of the big hows I think that we can work on being bold and taking action on. When we reach out, the other thing is thinking about allies. We might find allies in unexpected places, maybe different but compatible definitions of justice. That might mean that the events or the activities that we engage in might not feel as controlled or as familiar as we typically expect them to be. But we kind of have to be bold in our thinking and kind of adopt the DIY, the do-it-yourself mindset, and be open to new experiences. And the last point on this slide that I think is one that can be easily overlooked is that not every effort in strengthening or building relationships is going to be a win. Sometimes we learn the most from our failures. So it's important to both with each other, within our organization, within our league, share both what works and our best practices, but also to share what we've learned from our disappointments or things that didn't work out the way we'd hoped they would.
Great, thanks, April. So we're going to take a little time and we're going to dig in into each of these areas on the right and give you examples of what different leagues are doing throughout the state and how we are creating those opportunities to meet and genuinely engage with those who may not have participated civically in the past. So I'm going to start with the voter services side of things for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the resources, again, these are live links, and I tried to, you'll see the one at the bottom, additional voting videos. That one is in plain language. The rest are all URLs, but I could not get them to convert, but they all are alive. They're all working. So these are some that we, again, filtered down the dozens, if not hundreds of options that were out there, even on our state website. And we pulled out the ones that we thought would be most valuable. And some examples and stories from a variety of different, again, leagues around the country is to register underserved voters at food pantries, community health clinics, senior living centers, technical colleges, universities and libraries, at high school career days, at the DMV, farmers markets, incarceration facilities, and areas for formerly incarcerated, and at festivals and fairs like the Nina Powwow, a Latino Fest, Juneteenth, Pride Fest, and Hmong New Year. Some of the alliance partnerships, and you'll see as we go through these slides where we're talking about the specific areas of our league work, sometimes we have more resources than others. And so again, this is a living document that we'll continue to add to. But looking at partnerships with nonpartisan organizations, a couple of which are all voting as local, as well as chambers of commerce. And this is such a beautiful example from the Milwaukee League they had a new voter engagement at La Causa Parent Teacher Night. And what they decided to create before the event was a future voter serape stole. And two students came up and saw that, and they picked it up, and they are best friends and wanted to know if they could take a picture, and which they did. And so this is an example again of something very unique that was done by the Milwaukee League, and then how it really resonated with and gave an opportunity for two young women who intend to be future voters as well too. And then I will turn it over to Cole.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about programs and events and how we can incorporate, the DEI lens into them. So first, we have some links to the left, the best resources. They're really long, but they're actually only 3. And so what they do is they help you think about some factors to consider when you're planning events or webinars. Some examples that were really helpful is thinking about accessibility, whether it's the time, is it during the day or is it in the evening? Are most members going to be able to come if it's during the day, or is the evening better? If you're having a Zoom webinar, are you making sure that we can, if needed, put the closed captioning on? Thinking about hybrid, right? So are you live streaming an event that's in person? So if anyone who can't make it, whether they're ill, they're a primary caregiver for somebody, or they don't have transportation, they can still participate or still see what's going on and attend. Also thinking about venue space, right, in terms of accessibility, as someone who is using a white cane or someone who's in a wheelchair going to be able to access any room or even entry into the building. Thinking about plain language, also thinking about your presentation, thinking about font, thinking about the colors used, and always thinking about audio. So these are tools that are very helpful. And then we also love being able to share what some events have gone on throughout the state. So at Whitewater, there was a Nicaraguan refugees book panel resettlement, Appleton Fox Cities, videos from Lawrence U students on discrimination in that area. Ozaki, Washington County also had an immigration event, Pathways to Citizenship, where there was a lawyer who came to talk about that. There's also book panels, donations. We have the Wisconsin Civics Games that we participate in at the local high schools within Ozaki, Washington County. So I'm not going to go through all of the examples, but these are just some of what's going on throughout the state. And then thinking about what alliances and partnerships are you already have as a league, or how can you bridge and create that alliance of partnerships within your local area. Next, we want to share an event that the Greater Chippewa Valley League held. They have a great relationship that they've built within their community. They're focusing on building alliances, and an example was the Eau Claire Hmong Association that held a simulation of the plight of the journey from Laos to Thailand to the US, detailing the harrowing experiences. They utilized not only art, but the performing arts, such as dance and singing, of the Hmong community in their gatherings, and working to maintain a better relationship with the other minority group, the Latino, Latina, Latinx community. And then this is an event that Ozaki, Washington County held that we talked about just a second ago on the previous slide, Spotlight on Immigration, Pathways to Citizenship. It was a panelist of 3. Immigration attorney, as I had mentioned, in English as a second language instructor or ESL instructor, and a recently naturalized US citizen from Germany. They also viewed the Flagmakers film about the employee-owned Eater flag in Oak Creek, which sews and ships 5 million flags per year. And they requested donations for International Institute of Wisconsin to help newly arrived refugees establish homes in the communities. And there was a book discussion held prior to the event called America for Americans by Erica Lee. And we'll discuss an event that the Northwoods held. So an introduction to treaty rights, tribal sovereignty, and ceded territories. The Importance of Treaties and Treaty Rights by Jenny Van Sickle, a key member of the Public Information Office of Great Lakes Indian Fish and Wildlife Commission, also known as GLIFWIC, in Odenau. And I apologize if I am not saying these names correctly. They co-sponsored the event by American Association of University Women, AAUW, the Lac de Flambeau Band of Lake Superior Chippewa Indians, and WXPR. Members were encouraged to pick up and read the copy of the booklet, Ojibwe Treaty Rights by GLIFWIC, before the presentation.
Great. I'll go through some of the actions, examples, and resources that we're going to share here. As you know, in League advocacy, we often refer to as action. So here we have a few calendar listings. I think I'd also like to call out, and we can share these, later. There's a outreach circle is a tool that we can use to help connect us to our legislators on issues at the state and federal level. And then there's also the good work that our legislative committee does in tracking legislation, which affords an opportunity for us to take action or to advocate at the state level. I think most resources are going to be very community specific. So I'm part of the Appleton Fox Cities League, and I know that we have a very good observation core that monitors, observer core that monitors both the Common Council, our city government and municipal government in Appleton, as well as some of the smaller councils in some of the adjoining municipalities. We also monitor the county as well as the school board meetings. So we share those resources. And we've also here in the Appleton Fox Cities been able to stay connected to some marginalized community groups through what is called the Equity Network, where we, as part of our work in observing for the League, we pay special attention to any issues of justice or equity or anything that come up that might provide an opportunity for us to ally and support those marginalized people, groups that are not being heard or represented or might be slandered in a formal setting. So that's some of the resources are going to be very community specific, but a lot of these slides, this is a living document, and I wasn't here at the beginning, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating, but I think it's important to note that we will continually update these slides with other examples that we hear of or that you can provide to us. So communication is key on that. I will go through two specific examples in the following slides, but right here we have a few listed out for you. I'll talk a little bit about the Line 5 advocacy up in Ashland Bayfield, but you can see that both Beloit and the Appleton Fox Cities have made statements formal advocacy statements on behalf of marginalized communities. There was a Manitowoc example for making the case for a mental health court. And then again, with alliances and partnerships, I think these are going to be very specific to our communities. So it'll be very interesting to see what kind of feedback we're getting from you. But I'd be happy to walk through some specific examples just to give you an idea of what DEI in advocacy looks like. So you might be familiar with a Canadian corporation called Enbridge. They are an oil pipeline. And Line 5 is an oil pipeline that runs through the Bad River Band of the Lake Superior Chippewas Reservation. And is in the Bad River watershed. So what the League up in Ashland Bayfield did was what may be familiar to many of you, part of what sounds like was kind of the formal League process of doing a very thorough research and study around what are the impacts, what would this look like, what are better alternatives, and then partnered with their Bad River siblings to advocate against the Line 5 going through the watershed, the Bad River watershed there. And I know we have a few folks that were actually intimately involved in this on the call, so I'm sure they have much more detail around what how this came to be. But it sounds like there was also a documentary called Bad River, directed by Mary Mazzio. And that was recently released and is available for streaming. So the link is at the bottom of this slide there. And then this is an example of a kind of broader view of DEI. So rather than a specific issue and forming an alliance with an affected group, was a broader view. In Appleton Fox Cities League, we decided 2 years ago that rather than doing a more traditional single issue study, we would take a look at our entire local position document, which was, as you may know, as your documents maybe, is a little bit of a patchwork, right? The positions came from all different time periods, and some of them were very relevant, some of them were a bit outdated. So we decided that we were going to kind of revise and streamline our entire local position document, but most importantly, we would do so with a DEI lens. And for us, we also had a geographic lens in mind, because we had grown from and changed our name formally from being just Appleton to Appleton Fox Cities. So to encompass some of the smaller municipalities in the Fox Valley region. So I'm not going to read the whole slide, but I really do want to read just the preamble that we came up with as a precursor to any of our positions to reinforce the importance of DEI into all of our work. So our preamble states, the League of Women Voters of Appleton Fox Cities is committed to strengthening our communities by empowering individuals and groups to better engage with their government. Whether explicitly stated or not, the League of Women Voters of Appleton Fox Cities affirms that our local governments, commissions, and advisory committees must reflect the diversity of our communities and uphold the right of every individual to live a healthy and authentic life with a sense of belonging, respect, and acceptance. We intentionally advocate with and for all to be treated with dignity, including those who are marginalized, stereotyped, misunderstood, or intentionally ignored.
So now we're going to talk about some ways that we can communicate what's going on and what each local league is doing. So some things to think about is, how do you promote the events that are going on with your local league? Where do you post, right? Some best resources, thinking about social media. If your league has a Facebook, an Instagram, I think Blue Sky is a new platform that some leagues are turning to. Thinking about accessibility, especially when you're posting content on your local league website, if your league has one, and making sure that it's equitable for anyone to access, especially if they have a screen reader, right? If they have low vision or if they're blind, that's something that they're going to need to navigate your content on the website using the screen reader. Thinking about logos and making sure that they're representative. What's great is that we have, LWV has a Pride Month logo, which is inclusive, and it shows that we are an ally and how we're supportive for equal rights. And then thinking about different resources that you can use to either promote national heritages, or kind of thinking too about, we don't always have to be the leader in spaces, right? Thinking about how, if you have an alliance or a partnership within your community and they're posting on their social media, how you can uplift that, right? So how you can just share what that community partner has posted. So kind of thinking work smarter, not harder. And then if you have a newsletter, that would be a great way to promote resources or upcoming events. Again, promoting or uplifting what your partners are doing, which I know is something that Ozaukee-Washington County does, not only on their social media, but on their league website with their community partners. So that's a great way to kind of think about, how can we expand our bandwidth and the impact without always having to do something that's league sponsored. Some great stories that we'd want to share is, participating in Pride Month. That's something that Green Bay does. Making sure Sheboygan has English and Hmong translations on their website, which is awesome. Thinking about disability rights. From Stephen's point, again, thinking about accessibility, St. Croix League, and things of that nature. I believe that Christy found this image, and it's such a great image. It's so inclusive, right? Everyone vote. And this image was taken from LWV Lacrosse. And so we just really wanted to share how wonderful this image was and how it's a great representation of various different abilities and colors and things like that. Some, what's really important to highlight too, right, is this communications piece. It's impossible for one person to be all things to all people. And so again, kind of uplifting what the community partners are doing or taking images that are really relevant and promoting what's going on. There's a lot of different approaches to do this. And so if you don't have the membership capacity to have a website or social media, then how are you promoting what's going on? Is it word of mouth? Is it by actually printing flyers and hanging them up in your community? And so there are a couple different posts here that we really wanted to highlight. One being a What's on Your Mind that Ozaki, Washington County hosted for International Holocaust Remembrance Day. And Christy, do you mind sharing a little bit more about that
Sure.
What's on Your Mind event?
Yes, actually, Beth Bauer, one of our league members, and she's also with Braver Angels. Her by marriage, her grandmother, I think it was. I don't think it was her great aunt. This is in January, so it's hard for me to remember the details. But she had gone around and had taken her aunt around, and she had spoken in a variety of places. And she was a Holocaust survivor, and so Beth had the maps, the story, the very personal side of what had happened. And her aunt had eventually moved here to the United States, and it was just a very moving, and we call it a "What's on Your Mind" event, where it's just a Zoom webinar for about an hour, and anyone can speak about a topic that's of interest to them, and those who are interested will show up. But it was very moving, and her great aunt is no longer living, but it was really a moving presentation.
And just before, I just want to wrap up this slide before moving on. One of the things that we really want to hit hard on is that diversity, equity, inclusion isn't something separate. There's no one size template that fits all. And so it's really important to think about what's going to work for your community and what capacity you have, right? So when I say DEI isn't separate, if your league is small and maybe you're only focusing on voter services, well, how can you incorporate that DEI lens? And so I know Christy covered this in a previous slide, but a way to do that would be, okay, maybe the library isn't the best space because maybe the people who come to the library probably already registered. So how can we go out in the community? Thinking about food pantries, again, thinking about hospitals and things of that nature. And there's so many different locations, but that's what we mean by DEI isn't separate. And it should be, you should consider a DEI lens from the perspective of whatever your local league is doing. And so in terms of communication, the Ozaki, Washington County co-chair, Judy Larkin, who's on this call, shout out, does a wonderful job posting to Facebook and Instagram several times a week, making sure that she's interweaving the DEI thought or lens in all of the messaging.
Thanks. And as we said, you don't have to recreate the wheel. Just share what other leagues, if you like something that another league has done, just share that. We want to talk a little bit about leadership and diversity, equity, inclusion opportunities. And again, we have a couple of resources out there, one of which is the mentor program that Wisconsin League has in place, the DEI assessment tool. And then Tough Circle is really all about youth, and it's with Tufts University, and they have some really good statistics and really good information there as well too. Some examples and stories: Green Bay has youth members on their local board. Whitewater has made their board more diverse from over the years. And for Ozaki, Washington counties, our youth vote group hosts a Flag Day voter registration event whenever they're available. And then overall for the state of Wisconsin, board training, including CAC, Community Alliance Committee guidance documents. There are a number of documents that we've created over the last several years that again act as really strong resources for anyone interested in this, in pursuing it. And then one of the alliance partnerships that Manitowoc has is with Leader Ethics. I think that La Crosse may have that same alliance as well too. And so an example here is the youth vote group. And when we think about leadership, it's not just about the leadership, necessarily our board here in our local league, but it's about how we're helping to develop and actually learning from our youth vote group members as well too. We've started, and Victoria Benson Hora is on the call today. She is the leader and the chair of the youth vote group committee. And so over the last 3 years, and it's been in existence for 3 years. It took us about 3 years to get it up and running when we decided we wanted to go down that path, and then we've had it for the last 3 years. These are some of the presentations that those young students, young adults have actually hosted for our community. The most recent was AI Revolution or Risk. The first one they did was how to run for office. They always have a panel of presenters as part of that, and they had 2 young men who were in their 20s, I believe, who ran for office locally, who were part of the panel presentation. And last year they had one on the environment, which is a hot topic certainly for youth as well as for all of us. And the picture over on the right is from last year with a speaker from River Keepers, as well as a horticulturist, a local horticulturist as well too. So the other thing that our youth vote group does in terms of have really taken the lead, along with Mark Drake, a social studies teacher from West Bend High School, our local high schools, and we have a lot of them. Many of them are participating in the Wisconsin Civics Games, which is something that is sponsored by the State League, and they just had their finals just about a week ago. And the West Bend High School took 2nd and 3rd place. Am I right, Patty? Was that right? 2nd and 3rd place. I don't remember who took 1st place. Do you remember? Was it Slinger? I can't remember who the 1st place winner was. But it's certainly something that the involvement in the Civics Games brings the youth into our league as well too, and it sort of flows back and forth in that regard. So again, strong leaders, future leaders. I'm convinced that one day one of our youth vote group members will be on the Supreme Court, and I think another one is going to be on the Federal Reserve based on their applications. So we'll see.
Thanks, Christy. So I'm going to walk through the education piece, and I just want to remind everyone on the call that Christy, Jean, Cole, and I, we live and breathe DEI. This is something that we've been doing for a while, and I mean, this presentation itself we've been working on for over a year, I think. So, if you're sitting here at this point in the presentation and starting to feel a bit overwhelmed by all of these wonderful things that everybody seems to be doing, please don't feel overwhelmed. Please don't feel like you're not doing enough. This is not meant to make you feel as if you're behind or wrong. I just wanted to say that because I think if you're in one of those leagues that maybe doesn't have a dedicated DEI committee or chair, or you don't have a lot of members, you don't have to be all things to all people. Again, we're not doing this for diversity's sake. We're doing this because it's crucial to our mission, because this is how we defend democracy. And if you're not sure like how to get started or feeling a bit overwhelmed, my recommendation would be education. And this is just a small sampling of what resources are out there. Any of those earlier slides, the beginning slides in the presentation belong, here. I mean, that's education. That's getting yourself educated about what is DEI, how does it impact me, and how can I take this and the work and apply it to the work I'm doing with the league. So here's just a few examples of maybe some of the key work that we do in league with our strength in understanding the mechanisms of voting, having those relationships with clerks and those who run elections, how we can take that knowledge and those strengths and bring them to those who are less likely to be engaged or understand how the voting process works. So, and in my corporate world, I remember there was a salesperson that they would say, if you're trying to build a relationship, if you're trying to get a client, leave a mint, right? Like when you're in a restaurant and you're leaving, there's the little mints at the checkout cashier table. You give somebody you ask for nothing in return. It's just an offering, like, here, here's something that you might find useful. You know, here's some information that I have about how you can vote, and, you know, how you might be, you know, suppressed because, you know, you've had to change your formal your gender on your license, or, you know, if you're a Latina trying to navigate reproductive care, here's some information. Those are like the first toe into relationship building. And even if you're not there yet, this is a good place to start to just get familiar with some of the issues and how it's applicable to you and your community. So like, I think, you know, many leagues that I here in the Appleton Fox Cities, we've done a lot of field trips. We do a lot of book discussions. So I can share a few of those examples. I would hope that something sounds familiar, you know, regardless of where you are on the DEI spectrum. You know, maybe you've done a field trip as an organization, or, you know, had a book share discussion. So maybe there's a way to incorporate DEI into some of those activities that you're already familiar with doing. So I know in Appleton Fox Cities, we not only have a book share, we like the word share rather than club because it just feels more open and sharing. And then we actually do physically share the books as well, or podcasts or movies. But we try and vary our meeting times so that it's accessible to maybe those who are working during the day. We'll have 1 month, we'll have it in the evening, and then the next month we'll have it in the afternoon. So it can appeal and be accessible to a broader range of people. And then I think if we go to the next slide, you can see some pictures of two different events. One was a field trip to the Latino Arts Center, celebrating our shared roots. And then the second picture there is a community presentation that the St. Croix Valley hosted on immigration law. So there's a lot of different ways. And I think one of the things we heard too in putting this together is that, you know, some leagues are like, well, we're not doing anything DEI, but they have done something like this, or they do have, you know, bilingual voting material. So you may already be doing some of these things and not just not thinking of it as we are doing DEI. Okay. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about those organization alliances. So I think these resources are really, really important. As I said, you know, DEI is one of the foundational pillars of the League of Women Voters. The other foundational pillar is nonpartisanship. So it can get a little tricky. It sounds like simple, right? But sometimes, you know, it might be a bit murky, like what is a partisan group or not. So we have guidance for leagues about nonpartisan partnerships. There's a partnership presentation from the 2022 convention that's linked here, as well as a link to some language to send as an invitation to partner. So I know that Jean is going to go through one example that the Appleton Fox Cities did. I'll speak to another in the following slides, but you can see from these alliance and partnerships, you know, and even from the previous slides, each community, each chapter has their own community local groups that they're partnering with, and it may be coming together to do a shared event, and that's, you know, a true partnership. It might just be amplifying, like following a group and you know, reposting their message on your Facebook page, or, you know, putting an event that they're having on your calendar of that you're promoting to your members. So there's a whole spectrum of ways that you can build those alliances and those partnerships.
This slide is a great example about how things that you might do end up with results that you might not have expected. This is a program that was done in collaboration with our Performing Arts Center. Sorry, my grandson just joined our meeting. With our Performing Arts Center, Poet Laureate Dasha Kelly Hamilton's Making Cake. Well, if we take a few steps back, this started several years before then, when our league was doing advocacy and education and partnering with Juneteenth, with Latino Fest, with Hmong New Year, with Pride Fest. We were doing speaking up at city council and county board meetings. We were doing voter registration at high schools. We were doing all of these things. And then the centennial of the 19th Amendment came around. We decided to celebrate diversity the whole year. And our first program we did at the Performing Arts Center, in which we had a person talking about the influence of the Haudenosaunee women on the early suffragists. Now, how does this end up with making cake? After we had done all of those things, the executive director of the Performing Arts Center contacted our local league and said, would you partner with us? We're having Miss Saigon coming in, and we want to do some community events along with that. So they asked us to partner with them with a program including Vietnam and Hmong veterans, where we had a program where a couple of the actors who were children of refugees presented. And it all goes back to our whole devotion to diversity, equity, and inclusion, that we were asked to be a part of this organization, and which led to making cake. Okay, next slide, please.
I'll just talk to this one really quickly. As Jean mentioned, in the Appleton Fox Cities, we have a Juneteenth celebration. And so the league has been present doing voter registration. I think you can see in this one picture, the civics wheel kind of from the side there, the civics game, which is always fun to bring in the younger folks that are in attendance at these family-friendly events. So it was last year, the city of Appleton has a formal, what used to be a DEI coordinator and is now renamed to, I think, Belonging and Community. He is, he's a fantastic human. And not only is he special assistant to the mayor, you know, in charge of belonging and community in Appleton, but he also has his own podcast, Appleton Engaged, in which he interviews a lot of the community groups that help make Appleton a more welcoming place for all. So he did invite us, the league, to participate. As the DEI chair, I was able to go to the podcast and record a podcast with him. And in the course of this recording, he was talking that and saying that he is not only, you know, wearing all these multiple hats in his government roles, but he's also an alumni leader for a historically Black fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha, out of UW Oshkosh. And they have a very civic oriented mission. And so he was wondering if we would be able to partner at Juneteenth. So he got not only alumni representatives, but also current student members of the fraternity at UW Oshkosh to come. And we shared the same tent and we all worked together. And the guys from the college had so much fun running the wheel and asking the questions and giving out the candy prizes. And it was so meaningful, not only to just be even more included in this event that we attend every year. And, you know, we kind of set up our tent and we're there and we talk to people and we register voters. But in this way, it was like we were just so much more welcomed and part of the family because we were there together. We had this shared presence, and it was just a really fun time. And we're going to do it again this year. So we're just continuing to build on that relationship, all because of, you know, that one conversation. Oh, we have this shared mission. Maybe we should do this together. And that's kind of how it evolved.
This slide is a graphic created by Dr. Pam Herr, who is a DEI expert in the Appleton Fox Valley area, and describes the stages that we all go through on our journey as we go from they, in which we are beginning to recognize, be curious, and celebrate DEI, to I, in which I and we, in which we begin to examine our own personal and organizational journey, recognize privilege and its relationship to democracy, and begin to be intentional in our work, to us, in which equity and inclusion are embedded in the culture of our organization and the work we do. And thank you to Dr. Pam Herr for allowing us to share this. So we've given you a lot of information today. I hope this can be helpful to you and your local leagues. We are very, very interested in, did I take your place, April? Okay. We are very interested in what you're doing locally. This is a living document. We want to be able to add to it. We know there's a lot going on out there. So what's next for us, for the Community Alliances Committee and for us as an organization? First of all, we would love to have any of you who are interested in this to join the Community Alliances Committee. We talked earlier about that the committee creates goals every year. Well, we've created some really great documents that are available on League of Women Voters Wisconsin website. We have a document that was done in conjunction with two Indigenous women from Wisconsin on understanding land acknowledgements. It gives you guidance for what to do, and even more importantly, for what not to do in a land acknowledgement. And one of the things the two women told us is that you should not use the same land acknowledgement for every program. Every one you do should be different and specific to what the program is, and that every land acknowledgement should have action tied to it. We have a document regarding recognizing and dealing with bias when you see it in your local leagues. In that document, we created some specific examples of things that had happened at league events and ways that you can deal with them. So anyways, all of the documents that CAC has created are on the website. We want to hear your stories. We really do. We'd love to hear both your successes, your challenges. As you've seen this, you've probably thought of things your local league has been doing, and we'd like to hear about that. We challenge you at the local level to reach out to organizations, and you can begin with organizations that any of your members have relationships or experiences with. I have been keeping up on the chat. I'm a little behind now, but I had asked Anne Chartier and Dorothy Sky if they would be willing to talk about how they developed their relationships, because that's something we hear also, is that I would love to do it, but I don't know how. Anne or Dorothy, would you be able to talk a little bit about how you fostered your relationships? Are you still here? Looks like Anne and Dorothy have dropped off. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
So the question, and some of this will be for Cole. One of the questions is, when will the PowerPoint be posted on LWVWI? I'm going to leave that to Cole to answer.
Yeah, I responded within a week or so.
Okay. Okay. Somebody had asked earlier if all of the resources can be sent to everybody. As Christy said, the links are live. The PowerPoint will be on LWBWI website, so you can go to that if you'd like a listing of the links. We can see about putting something like that together. Sharon Hill. Sharon, who are you with?
VP of Advocacy, League of Women Voters of Georgia, but I actually work at a clinic there in Milwaukee, and so I have been following you all. It's mental health, so definitely that is the I part of DEI for our mental health and behavioral health and mental illness population, which includes everybody.
Yeah. Well, Sharon, thank you for joining us. You win the prize for the longest distance.
Well, thank everybody for all that they're doing. This has been great. I was on by phone and then joined. Yes, I've been listening and making notes. Yes, and I already know what you all do in Wisconsin. You all rock. So hello.
Thank you, Sharon. Okay, anybody else have questions or comments or would like to share some of the wonderful work that their leagues are doing?
Yes,
see
Patty.
Patty has her hand up. Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, there was a previous question. I think the two participants had already left about how they reached out to some of their local partners. And thanks to our DEI chair, Katie, she's really done a wonderful job. And one of the things we did last summer was contact some local 501c3s that we were familiar with, maybe just by reading about them in the paper or on social media. One of them was Youth and Family Project. And Katie and I went over and just had a meet and greet with their executive director, kind of a get to know you talk. What do you do? What are the things that you're passionate about? Tell us about your organization. It was give and take. Part of, I think that was in June. And during the course of that conversation, she shared with us how their third annual LGBTQ plus Pride celebration was coming up in July. Well, we thought that was a great idea and asked if we could be included in it, and showed up for one of our partners. And it was really a great experience. And of course, there were a lot of other local organizations there. So I guess it would be just kind of a cold call, but calling up other organizations are interested in making their own alliances too. And don't be afraid to just reach out and say, hey, we would like to get to know you. And here's who we are. And I think it just strengthens the relationships that we've had. We've done that with some other organizations in our communities. So I just wanted to share that information. Don't be afraid to knock on a door and make a phone call. You might be the only one doing that, but you'll be very welcomed, is my experience. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Dorothy, you got your hand raised.
Yeah, I hadn't left. I just couldn't get off mute.
Oh.
The Northwoods League has had programs at the Lake of the Torches facility, working with the Great Lakes Intertribal Council and their outreach coordinator to have programs about the treaties. We sponsored a candidate forum for the local at the town of Lac du Flambeau, where there's a lot of controversy and so on and so forth about the roads and the treaties related to that. And so we sponsored the forum and made contacts with tribal members who are running for the council and made some inroads there. And finally, as part of our upcoming program for the coming year, we're going to inquire of the Lac du Flambeau Tribal Council as to how we can support efforts to register Native Americans. So that's three things that we're doing in the DEI realm.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Dorothy. Would anybody else like to share? Okay, I think I see somebody with a hand raised. Pat Morrissey, do you have your hand raised?
I do. I couldn't find my hand on the bottom. I just wanted to share something that happened with me yesterday that I thought was really good news. Of course, you know, DEI seems to be shrouded in negativity from the current administration. And I was at a doctor's appointment yesterday, and I was with a nurse, and the nurse was telling me that her son just got his PhD, and he's working for a large medical group of doctors in Minnesota, and he was hired to do DEI with them, which I thought was very it made me feel good that, you know, this is going on in the community. And then because this was an Aurora facility, and Aurora's all over the state, this nurse told me that they are being sent constantly to DEI trainings. And so I also thought that was really good from the corporate level to hear.
Thank you. That's wonderful to hear. Does anybody else have their hand raised? I can tell you one more thing that the Community Alliances Committee has been working on. And this was one of our second goals, and that is understanding Section 203 of the Voting Rights Act, which requires voting information to be bilingual, depending on factors of a community. And we've discovered 6 municipalities who are required to provide bilingual voting information, most of which have not been doing that. So we have created documents to share with the communities and with the clerks regarding this, and are going around to the different municipalities. Poll has been a bilingual ballot observer in some of those areas. So just another example of some of the wonderful work we're doing at the Community Alliances Committee, and would love to have any of you be a part of. And I see, Judy, you have your hand raised.
I do. Hold on one sec. This is me. So I had put something in the chat, and I'm really interested in it. Is there are a lot of things that other groups have done, and those are the kind of things that are really wonderful to put on Facebook. And so if anybody from the other groups, if any of those have been recorded and there are links to them, and I can get a link, I can post it, and people would be, find those recordings interesting. They might, maybe they're on YouTube or something like that. I don't know, but anything in the future too that's coming up, I'm always looking for things to post, as Christy and Patty know quite well.
Judy is she's our social media queen.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Queen bee. Yeah.
Cole, do you want to speak a little bit about the Pies Pantry along those lines?
Yeah. So what we lovingly call the Pies Pantry is an Excel spreadsheet that has several tabs, and it includes information both past, present, and future of the events that local leagues are hosting. It's a time where they can put a either blurb about an upcoming event or an informational flyer, and they post recordings of previous events too. So we definitely recommend that y'all go into that, not only to look at what's been in there, but that we're consistently updating it, and that you're posting all of the great events that go in there. Sometimes people kind of forget to do that, and if you have not heard of the Pies Pantry, it's typically because that goes towards either the president or vice president of the local leagues and the not the DEI chairs, excuse me, and the program chairs.
One other thing I'd like to mention is that mark your calendars for August 6th. The other event that we've been planning, the CAC group has been planning, is the 60th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And we're going to be at the state capitol. The hours, we're still not, you'll be getting more information specifically in the next couple of weeks, but it is August 6th, because that is the actual anniversary date. And we also know that our the national president of the league, Deanna, now I'm blanking on her last name. What's her last name, Jean? Deanna.
Win.
Deanna Wynn. Yes, Deanna Wynn is going to be one of our keynote speakers there. And so anyway, it should be a great day again at the Capitol in the Rotunda. So anyway, that should be fun.
Also, I believe that Judy had either a follow-up question or had a comment. And so I just wanted to circle back and give you the opportunity, Judy.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I just wrote it down. I'm wondering about this. It's Pie Pantry, P-I-E-P.
S, like a plural, Pies Pantry. And
Okay.
so we can follow up with a link.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you.
And I may have bombarded y'all with more information about Section 203 if you were interested in knowing anything about kind of how municipalities are determined to comply with Section 203, and all has to do with the Census Bureau.
PIES stands for Policy Issues Engaging the State.
Well, thank you, everybody, for being here. I hope that what we provided was helpful. This is available. I believe, Christy, this is available if local leagues want to use the
Yes.
PowerPoint
Yeah.
with
If-
their own
yeah.
local leagues to do
Yeah.
a DEI program for your own local leagues. So
It's a
thank
big
you.
file. It is a big file. So that's why it's going to be on the state website. Yeah.
And we just wanted to conclude, I don't know if it was actually said aloud, but I know the slide was up for a long time, that DEI is a promise and not a checklist.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Look forward to meeting some of you at the annual meeting.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.